You know, who wrote that? Shel Silverstein. Shel Silverstein. I never knew this till I got the book. Shel Silverstein was a black guy, but he wrote a song back in the 60s that Johnny Cash, a country singer, made popular called A Boy Named Sue. That's not as popular as The Giving Tree. It was funny. And the story goes that the guy wrote, I don't know if this thing's doing right or not. Jen's got a message up there. But
it's saying you're being recorded.
But anyway, the whole basis of that song is that some guy named his son Sue and then left his family knowing that he wasn't going to be around. He said you had to be tough to get by if you're a boy named Sue. And so Johnny Cash goes through all that stuff. But Silverstein wrote A Giving Tree. And, you know, could you tell us real quick kind of what the theme of The Giving Tree is? Either one of y'all said you love that book.
Oh, it's like the little kid that kept coming and kept asking the tree. And the tree kept,
Hey, pretty girl.
saying, like, just stay with me. And then the person stopped coming more.
Yeah. The little boy grew up playing on the tree and he ate its apples. And then when he got older, he carved his initials to some girl on the tree, and the tree loved that little boy. And as the boy got older, he didn't want to climb on the tree no more. He wanted to go places. So the tree let him cut the limbs off, make a boat out of it. He sailed away, he's gone for a long time. Finally comes back. He's an old man. He said, you know, tree, I don't need much anymore. And the tree, all that was left of the tree was a stump. And the old man sat down on the stump, and it says, and the tree was happy. Because the tree was always giving to that boy. And I think, I'm getting old, you know, and so it doesn't take as much to make me happy. I think about simple things. And I think about that with you guys. I was talking to some kids at Georgia Tech this week about how important it is to just do some simple stuff. One of the most important things you can do to be successful in your career and please God is to be reliable. If you're reliable, you'll have more friends. I teach that when I teach STEM in high school. I tell them, if you want to have more friends, be reliable. If your friends can always count on you to do what you said, they're going to really look up to you. Look over in Romans chapter 13. And Paul gives a little admonition there, which again is really good for college students, is good for old people too. Somebody read chapter 13, verse 8. 13:8, Romans 13:8.
Is the version matter?
I'm sorry.
The version.
Just read whatever you guys find.
Owe no one anything except to love each other.
Okay.
One who loves another has fulfilled the law.
Amen. So it says, don't owe anybody anything except to love one another. Now, you know, he's not just talking about pay your bills off, but he is saying pay your bills off. You know, you make an impression on people if you pay your debts. You pay your rent on time. That's a good thing. If you borrow some money from somebody, you be real careful. You pay that back. College students ain't got much money usually. Your mom and dad may give you some money, but you know, usually ain't got much money. And so, but it's important that you learn how to manage what you got and don't go out here and buy a bunch of stuff. And when you get out of college and you can get a credit card, don't go out there and run up a bunch of bills. There are people that play in the NFL and the NBA that incur huge debts. They make millions, but they overspend and they go bankrupt. And they got all kind of people wanting their money. And of course, if you got money, everybody wants to be your friend. Be careful, be reliable, and pay your debts. And as Paul says, don't owe anybody anything except to love each other. Now, what about if Eric said, man, I need to borrow $50, Jack. Should I loan him that $50?
If you have it.
Helping the man out. Okay, let me tell you this. Loaning money to each other can hurt your friendship. I have gotten into arguments with people before because this woman, she's probably 70 years old. She wanted to borrow $50 from me for something. She's got a nice convertible, nicer car than I got, but she needed $50 for something. I said, well, I don't mind loaning you the money, but I'd like to write it on a piece of paper and let's both sign it, because I don't want you to come back later and say you didn't borrow anything. I don't want to come back later and say, no, you owe me $200 or something like that. If you do business with anybody, write down what you're doing. That's the best thing you can do for a friendship, is make sure that you are honest with them and straightforward. They'll appreciate that very much. And if you're the one loaning money, there's a brother in Charlotte that I baptized like 30 years ago in Boston. He'd just gotten here from Venezuela. I've been studying the Bible with his friend. He had two friends worked at the gas station from Venezuela. Late at night, I'd go down there and they'd both be drunk. They'd be cussing, but one of them would come study the Bible with me. And one day I came home from a trip and Mo came by the house and said, Jack, I really need $30. And I gave him the money. I didn't make him sign nothing. I was okay if I didn't ever see that money again. Because, you know, he's my friend. I can deal with $30. And so I gave it to him and I didn't ever get that money back. But he said, Jack, I've got a friend who just got here from Venezuela and he stopped in Tennessee and did some farm work. Now he's up here and he really loves God. I'll bring him to the Bible study tonight. And he did. And that guy, David, oh man, he loved going to church. He loved studying the Bible. He went on and became an evangelist. He went and helped plant the church in Madrid, Spain. He's now a financial guy in Charlotte, North Carolina. He calls me Poppy because he's still very Latino in his base. But he loves me. 30 years later, we're still really close. But I paid $30 for David. And I sometimes bring that up. We joke about, I paid $30 for you, brother. And he's real happy about that. And I love Mo. I ain't seen Mo in all these years, but I'm so grateful Mo brought David to me, because David went over there and baptized. David baptized a guy in Madrid who went to Auburn University. He preached for us a couple of years ago, in case any of y'all were around. His name is Juan Zaragoza. Juan came to Mobile as a high school exchange student. His parents got a divorce in Spain. He didn't want to go home, so he came to Auburn. He graduated #1 in his class in aerospace engineering. Now, aerospace engineering is cakewalk anyways, that ain't hard. Ain't that right? Ain't that right? Yeah. No. He graduated #1 in his class in aerospace. He worked hard and he went back to Madrid to start a business. And David and his friends had just gone over there and planted a church in Madrid. They met Juan, invited him out to church. Him and his wife got baptized in Christ. Within a couple of years, they were asked to lead the church there. He's a really talented guy. Led the church there for 15 years. He's developed some health problems. He calls them autoimmune problems, which is diabetes and something else. And so he moved down to the coast. It was better for his health. And he started researching things about how to help his health. And he developed some good things that really helped him. He started a business helping other people with their health. He told me he's got 300 clients. A bunch of them are medical doctors that pay him money to help them know how to treat their diseases. So he's my spiritual grandson. You know, I love that guy. He's a great fellow. But I want y'all to have friends like that. If you see somebody that's in need and you can help them, don't be too sticky about, oh, you got to sign a piece of paper because Jack told me to. I'm saying that especially between you. I've had friends, one friend out in Montana, they put in $200,000 to a business in Boston with a brother, and it went bankrupt. And they lost $200,000. I saw him last summer. They said that brother that lost the money, he hit it big. He sent us a check for $200,000 30 years later, but he was reliable. That caused friction between them a lot of years. Okay, that's a simple lesson. Now turn over to John 13. Y'all know the scripture. I want you to, how many of you know a song that goes John 13, 34, and 35? Y'all know what that verse says? It does. Can you quote all that, brother?
I can't quote it. I can read it.
He says,
The new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another.
amen. How many of you have memorized some scriptures? These little goody two shoes, their hands going up. I mean, I got the scriptures going on. Now that's really a good thing. How many scriptures have you memorized? Just ballpark. Okay. Tomorrow's my daughter's birthday. She'll be 46 years old. When she was 2 years old, she memorized 50 Bible verses. Kids can memorize anything.
Yeah.
That guy sitting over there is probably smarter than all the rest of us put together. And he's going to memorize scriptures. I'm going to beat him if he don't. No, but seriously, when y'all grow up and have children, teach them Bible verses. Teach them memorize. The good thing is you'll memorize it when they do. I know 50 verses because I learned them when I was teaching my daughter. At the same time, I was leading a team ministry and campus ministry and working a full-time job as a chemical engineer. But it's really good. And my daughter is now the CEO of an international corporation. I tell all you college students, she's a CEO because I taught her 50 Bible verses when she's 2 years old. She started 3 churches. She went on a team to Vermont as a college student, planted a church up there. Then her and her fiance went to Macedonia, north of Greece, planted a church there. It doubled in 4 months. They came back, got married in Boston, moved after their honeymoon to Bosnia and started a church there. Bosnia had just finished the Civil War. You couldn't walk in the parks, anything with grass, because there's landmines planted there, probably still this day, because the Serbs tried to kill all the Muslim people there. But she went there and spent 2 years and planted churches, came back, was having children. So she started a job with a company that brings in au pairs from Europe. And she grew in that job to where she's now running the whole company for the boss of the company. But it's not the only reason she's a leader like that she memorized those Bible verses, but it sure didn't hurt her none. I guarantee. I went to a Martin Luther King event at Kennesaw State, and I didn't realize that they invited me, and I went up there and I sat down at the table. Turned out it was at the speaker's table. There are 2 deans there. Every person at the table except me got up and spoke for 5 minutes or something. These 2 deans, young African-American woman and man, and both of them quoted scriptures in their talks. I've noticed this. I've been working with Tuskegee about 20 years now, the university. I taught high school over there for 3 months about 15 years ago. But I noticed when I started hanging out there more, a lot of the professors talk about Jesus. They quote scriptures. Now, they don't do the best job of living it out, which is typical of religious people. Probably some of y'all were that way growing up. You went to church, you were nice kids, but you didn't do what the Bible said. You didn't even understand it that well. But I love it that, the historical Black colleges, white people won't come and tell them they can't quote scriptures, man. That would violate our culture and history and everything. I love being there where I can talk about Jesus. I go to other universities, I'll talk about it some, but I have to be careful not to come across as too religious. But I want y'all to really focus on that. And I've got a song to go with John 13:34-35. And I don't have it written down, but we'll sing it and you'll learn it. It's got a girl's part in there too. But Ken Cat, have y'all ever sung that? Yeah. Yeah, something like that. Something like that. I only know how to sing it. Did y'all see my water? There it is. Okay, so I'll sing it, and I don't know what version it's out of, but it's simple enough. You'll just learn it. Starts with a new commandment I give you. A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. Let's do that one more time. Now I'll do the second verse. A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, that you love one another, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. Okay, so y'all memorize. You could probably sing that verse now. Kids learned all the books in the Bible by singing them. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Romans. Yeah, that's These days, even some math teachers have come up with raps to teach you math and science type things. Singing is a really good way to learn things. You know how the early Christians sang? Most of their songs were songs back and forth to each other. An old professor, an old fellow who founded a Bible graduate school, he's dead now, but he spoke at a campus retreat. And I drove him back to Birmingham. We were up at Mount Sheehan, drove him back, and my wife. And I asked him, said, Dr. West, could you tell me anything about what the lives were like of the typical Christians in those early days? And the old man, he's in his 80s, he's shaking, his voice shakes. He said, yes, that was my area of concentration. And he began talking, it's like he'd lived among them. He knew it so well. And he told me that when they sang, most of their songs were antiphonal chants, he called them, singing back and forth. We do that sometimes, like, oh, brothers, do you love Jesus? Oh, yes, I love Jesus. Are you sure you love Jesus? Sure, I love Jesus. Tell us why you love Jesus. That's why I love Jesus. Because he first loved me. And you go back and forth with the girls on that. A lot of songs like that. Who knows a scripture in the New Testament that tells us how we should sing to one another? Know where that is? One in Colossians, one in Ephesians. Colossians 3:16. Somebody look that up. And then Ephesians 5:19, I think it is. Somebody read one of those two verses to us.
I got Colossians 3:16.
Do it, brother.
Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts.
Okay. Sing to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. What is it? How does he say to sing? What's that?
From the Spirit with thankful.
No, what's the first thing he says about how you sing? Sing.
From the Spirit.
No. Read the scripture. Huh?
To one another.
To one another. How many times do you sit in church and you stare at that book or you look at the back of somebody's head and you don't sing to one another? You're supposed to be singing to each other. Now, some of us are a little shy about that. We're embarrassed. Maybe my voice ain't good. God doesn't care. He doesn't really care about the quality of your voice at all. It's the words you're saying. And you're supposed to sing to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. That's a good thing to know when you get to church. Church is not about following some real rigid set of rules. In fact, what do we do what do we normally call communion? What is communion? What's another word for it? Huh? Lord's Supper. Somebody said fellowship. Okay, because the Greek word koinonia means, it translates as fellowship, translates as communion. So when we take communion, most often churches develop the habit, we get that little piece of bread and that cup of juice and we stare, man, we're straining, trying to focus on Jesus, and we're thinking, trying to be spiritual and quiet. Whereas the very word says fellowship. Do you ever look at each other when you're taking that bread? Do you ever think about, Jesus gave his life for my brother over here, that sister over there. And that matters to him, that you think about it the way he intended it. And there's a couple moved from New Jersey, came to church with us a while. He never had been baptized and he had Alzheimer's. He's still pretty sharp, but his wife had been baptized. Their daughter was adopted. She was a disciple in college, and his wife died of cancer. So he kept coming to church because he always did that. He liked being there with us. He's very quiet, and he only knew a couple of us. And one day I came in, I hardly ever sit down in church. I walk around and look at people. And Dave is sitting up there on one of these rows all by himself. There's two people way down on that end. Dave's way down here by himself. 70-something-year-old man with Alzheimer's. And I just felt real bad. I know his daughter out in Dallas. And I went and sat down by Dave during communion. And I got my phone out and I took a selfie with Dave. And fortunately, it was toward the back of the auditorium. Some of them good Church of Christ people really thought, man, this guy's off his rocker taking selfies during communion. Doesn't he know how he's supposed to do that? That's about fellowship. You got a guy who doesn't know anybody there, who's got Alzheimer's. And he has one relative that he's close to out in Dallas. I knew it would mean a lot to her to get a picture from her dad. It meant more than worrying about what the self-righteous people might be thinking about what I did. Now, I don't try to do things just to distract people, but don't be so set in your ways that you can't do something to help a brother or sister. One day I saw a couple, a mom and sister, a mom and daughter outside. They had a little son and he's actually in a wheelchair. And it was during church, church going on inside. And I'm out in the foyer anyway. So I went out there, and there's 1,000 people in North River. I went out there to say hi to the little boy in the wheelchair. About the time I got there, the mom said, mom's probably 70 years old. She said, so that's why you never invite me over to your house anymore. And the daughter said, well, Mom, the last time you came over, I had to get the police to get you to leave. I turned around, I did a 180, and I wasn't ready to deal with that. My foster daughter, I was telling one of y'all about her earlier, she grew up around Charlotte. She, when she graduated South Carolina, she had become a Christian in college. Her mom's boyfriend was a drug dealer there in Rock Hill. And she said, they beat me, they locked me in the basement, but they let me go to school. So I came home from school one day in the 9th grade, and my mom and the boyfriend had moved and left me. They just threw my stuff in the street. So for 4 years, I lived on the street and went to school. My teacher taught me into going to college at South Carolina. She did really well there. But after she became a disciple, that's all she wanted to do. She came over and spent the summer working at Georgia Tech with us and lived with us and our daughter. And my wife took her to see a counselor all summer, had a lot of PTSD. But when she got out of college, she had job offers all over the world. Google, the FBI, everybody wanted to hire her. She's a young Black female engineer. I mean, those are popular. But she wanted to move down here to work with the Auburn Tuskegee Church. She got a job over in Montgomery, working the paper mill, did real well over there, became a board member at the Boys and Girls Club, helping kids because she'd been through so much herself. She's now an adjunct professor at Georgia Tech. She flies in and teach courses there in cybersecurity. She got her master's at Georgia Tech. When I walk on the tech, the low IQ alarm goes off over at school, but she's a professor there. But she told me, her name is Tia, and Tia told me after she came down here and worked in Montgomery, her mom suddenly found out she had money and she wanted to move down here with her. I said, don't do it. Me and other people said that's not a good idea. But she did. A few months later, she had to get the police to get her mom to move out. So you go through things like that. Those are difficult stories, but I want you to be prepared. I want you to be wise people. I want you to love people, but loving people doesn't mean you become a doormat. You do what's right, even for your relatives, because loving people is not letting them take advantage of you guys. It means you do what's right. And sometimes you got to say, you're my brother, my sister, my aunt, uncle, mom, dad, and I want you to do well, but I got to expect you to go out here and do some things that are right. So I mean to get off on all those tangents, but that goes back to paying your bills. It goes back to what we sang from John 13 there about love one another. It also means to love people that you don't get along with too well. How many of you have somebody you just don't get along with that well? I asked that in STEM classes, every hand goes up. Teachers raise both hands, But I had this old sermon from the 1960s, and it's called Christian Love. It's a bunch of examples of loving people that you don't get along with very well. I've listened to that lesson over 2,000 times because there's so many people I've had disagreements with. Some of them are my close friends and brothers. I moved down here to help the HBCUs and really to help get young Black people into college. I gave up my career to do that. But a couple of years ago, y'all know we had a president named Donald Trump, and he was wild and crazy. But one day he spoke to the United Nations, and he called out China because China has 2 million people in prison camps over there because of their religion. And they're throwing Christians out of the country. Most of them are Muslim people. And he called them out at the UN and said, that's really bad, you know. And I put some on Facebook about, hey, I'm really glad Trump called out China for violating human rights and stuff. Well, this couple I'm real close to, African-American couple, they come over and say, Jack, if you ever say anything good about Trump, that really bothers us, you know, it hurts them. They're real close to me. And we talked it through and they know what I'm about. And I said, guys, I'm not black, but I've given more in the last 20 years to the black community than you have. And you're good people, you know. So I'm real honest with them. I'm honest with you. We can talk about those things where we love each other. And I'll put my record up against anybody on that, you know, that I would never support it. That about 10 years ago, I was in Florida celebrating an anniversary, and we had reservations at the Ritz-Carlton. The only thing I knew about Donald Trump then was he was on TV, had that Apprentice show, and I hated it. When I found out he was staying there, I canceled my reservations. I went somewhere else. So I respect their presidents, every one of them. I write every one of them and invite them to church. I ask them, can I help you? I'll do STEM education with you, stuff like that. I wrote Bill Clinton. Y'all remember Bill Clinton? You read about him. Probably the most famous thing, Clinton was actually a really good leader. He didn't have good morals. He wasn't good at that. But boy, he really made things click, and he knew how to get along with people he didn't agree with. But I wrote Clinton a letter. They always spent their summer vacation up at Martha's Vineyard, close to Boston. I lived there. So I wrote him a letter and sent it by FedEx to him. Come on in here, young'un. I ain't gonna call y'all out for being late. Maya just got here, everybody on Zoom. And Terry On's with her. It's probably his fault though. Anyway, I wrote Bill Clinton a letter, sent it FedEx, because a friend of mine knew him, and he said, there won't be any people on vacation with him. Your letter might get through. I said, Mr. Clinton, I want to invite you to church with me, and I'd like you to come have lunch with us afternoon. We live in Boston, and I'm imagining him flying in this helicopter. I said, please don't tell anybody if you come. I don't want the press there. I don't want people coming just to see you. And I said, I haven't even told my wife. And I said, honestly, she'll pee in her pants if I told her that. I said that to the president. I got a nice letter back from him. But the thing that really hurt was about a year later, he had that affair with Monica Lewinsky. And I thought, he hurt his wife and daughter so much. I thought, if he would have just come and studied the Bible with me, he might have not done that. My dad went around on my mom and left her with 6 boys to raise by herself. It really ticks me off when husbands or wives are not faithful. Guys, I expect better of every one of y'all. I want you to grow up and learn how to build a family that will last forever. And you know, I told you a while ago, I was honest. I've told Trey and Katir, I said, man, you need to grow up and learn how to be an elder in the church. We need more Black elders, more men and women of color. I'm not putting anybody down to saying that. I'm saying, guys, I want you. I want to raise you up, because we need, it really helps people when they see somebody that looks like them. When I go to schools and I take young Black people with me, it's an all Black school in Atlanta, that really helps those kids, because I'm an old white guy. They can't necessarily relate to what I do. When I go to LA, they want me to bring Latino engineers with me, young people, because they're more relatable. I don't care. Okay, who gets the attention and credit? Don't y'all raise up. And I was telling some of you at dinner, the impact that Tuskegee graduates, and some of y'all are Auburn people too, the impact that Tuskegee grads have that I have seen is just amazing. Y'all go out there and you do great in your careers, and you do great spiritually, and you lead other people to know Jesus. Man, I'm so proud of you guys. I tell people all over the world. I was praying with Sean Wooten over in, he's been in Kiev for many years. He's in Moldova. He has a prayer time every day praying for Kiev. He asked me to pray with him one day, and he asked me to tell him some good news. I told him about y'all. This is the best thing I got going, guys. I tell people about that all the time. Y'all saw Steve Gibson's down here the other day, him and his wife. He's amazing. But man, he's the one that had it good being with y'all. I mean, I tell people all the time, you need to come down there and just see what those guys are doing. And really, I think a lot of the reason y'all are successful, you have an impact, is that verse that we sang a while ago. And since Amaya's been goofing off and just getting here late, we're going to sing that again. She claims she's a good singer, so we need to sing it. Have mercy. I teach you to come here late, young lady. Okay, so we're singing John 13, 34, and 35. It'll be pretty easy because y'all know those scriptures. And I challenged everybody about memorizing scriptures. And I guarantee you, when I come back, I'm going to be asking you, what scriptures do you memorize? I used to disciple the churches in China. I'd go over there every year and travel for a couple of weeks teaching. I didn't speak any Chinese, but after my lesson, I shared with them what Philippians 4, verse 9 says. Anybody know what 4:9 says? Somebody will probably memorize 4:8. 4:8's kind of famous. 4:8 says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. In the next verse, he says, whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice. I read that to the Chinese people, and I'm saying it to you now. Paul says, whatever you've seen me do, what you've heard me teach, all this stuff, you imitate what you saw in me. I can say that to you. I'm 72 years old. I don't know how long I'll live, but I hope 50 years from now, y'all are talking to some young people, tell them to memorize scripture, and you'll say, I knew this crazy old man when he's 72 years old. He told me he's going to beat me if I didn't memorize scripture. I don't usually beat nobody but the staff and evangelists. I did threaten to beat Jordan Massey recently. He didn't take his wife on dates and stuff like that. Now, what I asked him, because if you ever serve in the ministry or you're a leader, the church pulls on you to do everything. So with the people who are leading in churches, I tell them your most important role you'll ever have is being a husband, wife, and parent. And we had a meeting on Zoom with a bunch of leaders. At the end of it, it's just me and Jordan. And Jordan's an amazing guy and a great friend. I said, Jordan, how you doing with your wife and family? Because he's got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old and a wife. And he said, I'm doing better. I used to let the church be too important. How many of you remember some minister that you knew that ran all around with somebody and left his wife and family because he's too busy doing church work and he got into an affair with some woman or some woman did? And that happens in churches too often. So I'm telling them, be sure you give attention to your wife and your husband, spend time together. And I said, Jordan, if you don't do a good job on your ministry, I'll disciple you about it. I'll teach you how to do it better. I said, if you don't do a good job with your family, I'll get a stick and I'll beat the tar out of you. And Jordan said, I'll get the stick for you, brother, because he knew that was so important. And guys, I promise you, please, if you ever see me not treat my wife good, you feel free. You get a limb. You give me a good whack. That'd be way better than me dealing with God if I don't do that, because God says it's so important. I grew up in a broken family. I don't want to be a part of that. I want y'all to be successful. I want you to be an example to everybody around you at the university. Y'all are. Some of y'all know Dr. Aglin. I dropped by his office 5 or 6 years ago, just dropped in like I always do with him. And he picked up the phone, called a professor over from the veterinary medicine school. And I didn't know what he wanted. He didn't tell me. Guy came over there and Dr. Aglin said, Jack, this man's son played football in Georgia last year and he got injured. He's back here going to college and he's not doing well in school. He's not getting along with his family. This is his father. We were wondering if you'd invite him to that church y'all started, because we've seen the difference in those students and the other students on campus. They notice you guys. They see you. They saw Nathan Martin and Travis Hawkins and all these other people. And y'all are those people now that they're looking at. And when you get out there in business, they're going to be seeing you the same way. So that's about all I have to give for you, but I'm going to sing that song with you again. And, if I can answer any questions, I can give you good scriptures to memorize. I memorized a lot of them with my daughter. Today was my second daughter's birthday, February the 8th. My first daughter was born on February the 9th, 5 years earlier. So their birthdays right together. And I gave up being there with them to be with you. Do you know why I would do that? You know why? Yeah, why did I come down here instead of doing a birthday party with my two daughters?
So, but to have a birthday party with your sister?
Yeah, it's their birthdays. And I came down here to get with y'all instead of going to a party with them. Why would I do that? Because you're really important. You gonna come over here and help me lead this song? Oh, man. Oh, brother. He's brave. He'll do it. We had a house church Sunday, and my sermon was about 5 minutes long, but there's 6 little kids. They're running up, some of them run up, grabbing my legs, hugging me. And I thought about, there's some parents trying to get them. I said, leave them alone. I remembered when Jesus was there and the little kids came up, what did the disciples say to the kids? Get out of here. We're really important, And what did Jesus say to those disciples? He said, you better become like those kids if you ever hope to get into heaven. So, all right, stand up here, big man. We're going to do John 13, 34, and 35. But help me lead this so we can teach them. They're not as smart as you are, man. So you got to help them out on that. This verse right here, a new command. Why don't you read that for us? Read those 2 verses. He's going to read this for us. So Maya knows what we're going to sing. Read those 2 out loud.
34 and 35. A new commandment I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. All men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another.
Good job. And he read with a good loud voice, guys. When you speak up so people can hear you. That's a good lesson. You'll make more money if you learn how to do that. Okay, let's do this thing. A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this will all men know that you are my disciples. By this will all men know that you are my disciples, that you love one another. As I have loved you, that you also love one another. That's awesome, buddy. Good job. Again, I just lost my job. Let me throw in one more freebie for y'all. I have two cards here for friends. My wife is quiet. I'm not giving them away. These are birthday cards for other friends. My wife is probably the best person I've ever known at making cards for people. She writes stuff for people all the time. She'll give them to me. I'll put my name in there. And a few weeks later, somebody says, oh, thank you for sending me that card. I don't know what they're talking about. Gail's the one that did that. Some of you, Gail's very introverted. She's got a migraine headache tonight, so at the hotel. But she's very introverted. It's tough on her to be around a crowd. But she's great at listening to people, having good conversations, writing cards to people. And I got one here that I got the other day from a man that lives close to one of my daughters. He was the head of tourism for the city of Atlanta for like 40 years. He wrote me a thank you card. He's got a big train set out in his backyard. The tracks are about a foot apart. It's a big model train set. And he had me and the grandkids over to watch it. I took my buddy Justin, who's got cerebral palsy. We watched it. And so when I make chicken soup, I take somebody, him and his wife. I hadn't seen him since I just dropped the soup off. He wrote me this card and said, Jack, once again, you've outdone yourself with your delicious chicken soup. Wonderful. But you know what means more than the chicken soup? Somebody is that I thought about them and I went by to see them, especially old people like Ken Watson, man. He gets so old. Y'all just drop in and say hi to him once in a while, even when they ain't feeding you supper. It really makes them feel special that you remember them. And when you get old, come by my house too, you know, or come by my grave and say, I remember you, old man, whatever you do. But right, write cards like that. People learn from my wife, man. She is amazing. But it's great to spend time with you guys. Yes, sir.
How old is your longest?
1977, older than you are. And it was a cheap Bible to start with, but it's got all my notes in it, man. I've got signatures in here by people I love and stuff. I'll get every one of y'all to sign this. But the outside cover is going bad. And when I used to work on the Patriot missile, they had some tape we wrapped the igniter with. I wrapped it up with that Patriot missile tape on there. So that's special too and all that. But anyway.